Hi, Tony here from All the Remote Things with a special panel discussion on agility and planetary changes. I'm really excited to do this today. What we're talking about today, we're talking about activating 8 billion humans to engage in the world problems. And I've got a fantastic group here who really believe that we can amplify and impact worldwide through a community of agile leaders, and most importantly, you that are listening to this cast. How are we, team?
Great.
Fantastic.
Super.
So what I would say with that is it's good morning, good afternoon, good evening.
Good evening.
The world. So we're in France, we're in Germany, we're in Canada, and we're in Australia. So if everybody's really a bit, it's because we've got a lot of different time zones going on here. But it's great to have everybody here. So we're going to dive straight in. If you're wondering who these wonderful people are, well, you can see their names on the screens, but in the show notes, we've given you the notes on everybody and their bios, and of course you would have seen some advertising as we moved into this particular panel discussion. Team, what I want to start with thinking about is that we're talking about activating, the superpower of agilists to engage in the world problems, right? So that's what we're thinking about. And essentially, if that's the case, then what are those superpowers that they share with others in our agile community, and how do we activate those superpowers, right? Because I think that's the first part to it. So let me just start with this, ladies first. Joanne, what do you think about that? Talk to me about that.
Yeah, I believe we have there's so many superpowers which are there. I think the one that starts with me is I feel this belief of we love like complexity and dealing with the unknowns. And so we have this sort of like open mindset of being able to kind of like, okay, well, how can we figure out this particular problem, this thing? And so in the world of planetary challenges, there's so many unknowns. We just don't know. There's no like one solution to it, right? So we have to have this mind, this creative mind, right, to kind of work through it. I think the creativity, the openness to learn, the love of being and dealing with things that emerge, right? That's always exciting. And being able to weather the complexities, right, and experiment as we go through. I think I'm going to keep adding if I keep talking, but yeah, look, I think those are the things. But to activate that in others, like for me, I think it's starting to build the awareness that we have this capability and ability to do that. And so I feel to activate it in others is just being able to kind of share, like even with what we're doing here now, it's just you've got what it takes, right? So, and it's just realizing that they have it within them. And then and I think connecting with them as well, right, is another way to kind of get the activation going when you're doing it one-on-one and stuff like that, as we like to do in the community. It helps to activate as well.
Yeah, the agile community is such an engaged, connected community, but in some ways we're not connected, so we have to give a call to action. So as we're talking about that, what's your thoughts on that?
Sorry, did you say?
No, it was Kubair, but yes, I don't think you quite heard me.
Yeah.
So what's your thoughts on that, Kubair?
So I'll just add to everything that Joanne said, right? But for me, the biggest superpower that we share is the community, right? So we're a community of change makers, and change is the constant need for us all throughout time. And we seem to, as a community, we seem to be good at it. Not just enabling ourselves to change first, but motivating and facilitating change in others. And that's the common thread in this community. Now, how as to activate that in others? It's quite simply addressing, like as Joanne said, right? Not just our own limiting beliefs, but the limiting beliefs in others. We all look at our planetary, our global challenges, and they are huge, colossal challenges, right? They're all moonshots, and we think, hey, we're quite insignificant here, but you know what? It's our world. And in this world, the most significant thing is us. So that's for me, that's the thing to tap into. And as Joanne said, like, dare I say, wake them up. It's time for change.
Yeah, I think it's a great point. It is a wake up moment for everyone, isn't it? And Pia, you're about to say something, so I'll throw to you. What are your thoughts?
All right. Yeah, I just want to say yes to everything that Joanne and Kubair said, but Joanne, you touched on it but I just want to stress that one of our superpower is the power not to get stuck, because in the agile community, one of the basic traits that we have is the ability to work in small iterations, take baby steps instead of getting overwhelmed with big complex problems. And I think that's one of the key points that we can use to, well, for calls to action, for example.
Yeah, that's a great point. I can see you nodding there, Laurie. So what's your thoughts on that as well?
Yeah, sure. Nothing to everything. I mean, like, I will pick a kind of skill that I think is very related to what my colleagues said already, which is like deep listening. So this is like one skill that I love, and I think that's a superpower. Why? Because of course, deep listening allows us to connect to like other people in a different way, and so I think that deep listening is like a very huge, like macro skill or very huge superpower that contains many things inside. Because to practice deep listening, we need first to practice attention, to be in the present moment. Because if we are with our wandering mind, if we are like always like in our thought, our mind, that is only 50% of the time in the present moment, and the rest is like going to the past, going to the future. And if it is like this, we are not like allowing like the other person to express and to connect with the other person in a very deep way. So I think that deep listening is, well, a superpower that I love, and also like includes like the creation of empathy and also compassion, if you also like to do something with what the other person is facing. And I think that we need a lot of compassion nowadays, and we really need to sense the other people. So when we are in community, we really need to activate like deep listening. And also as Joanne mentioned, that deep listening allows emergence. And we as agilists, and we working with complexity and uncertainty, we need to allow emergence. We need to allow that, okay, what needs to emerge from the social field, this is what we need to allow, So I think this is my superpower, the one that I pick, and I think it's really connected with everything what was said.
Yeah. So, and this is very dear to my heart, and the reason I got involved with this, obviously, is because I was joking with everyone, before this, I live on an island off the coast of Australia, and Andrew, who I'll throw to in a minute, is also Australian. We've been affected greatly by some of these planetary challenges of change. Roaring bushfires. The next minute floods of stupendous size and shapes happening right now to us. So we're seeing the change. So it's very important to us as well. Andrew, I'll throw to you that those superpowers. What do you think?
Yeah, I'll build on what Laurie said. I think that's really important. To me, we live in a community, a global community nowadays, where the discourse that's amplified, whether it's via traditional media or whether it's via emerging media, tends to be the angriest edges of the discourse. So we can be led to believe that people are further apart on things than they actually are in practice. I think if you sit people down and explore things together, you'll find that there's a lot more common ground than there is, I suppose, grounds for argument. So I think that one of the Agile community's superpowers, and something that I've really been blessed to be a part of, is just that kind of deep curiosity for things and the collegiate nature of the community in terms of sharing knowledge and being really generous with your time if you've got something to share, and also generous with your attention if you're listening. And I think if there's anything that we could amplify about the Agile community that's going to help to bring the discourse together. It really is that.
Brilliant. And Rocío, what's your thoughts on it? We haven't heard from you, so you've been sitting there waiting patiently.
Well, thanks. The first that I want to say is thank you for this invitation, and thank you for having us, for inviting me and for having us. And thank you to everybody that is listening and watching to this podcast, because you are the reason why we are making this effort in several places around the world. I totally agree with everything that everybody has said here. I would like to say that we have a superpower, like, you know, we have like, we can fly, or we have like super strength, or we have like the speed like Flash and those Avengers things. But our superpower is that we are just humans. We are individuals, and we value. And the reason why we started everything here and we follow this movement that started 20 years ago is that we value individuals and interactions over everything. And that make us working collaboratively, working in a community, and smile and enjoy what we do and care about others. Empathy. And that empathy and that capacity or awareness to react to the changes, that is also part of our like key principles, is making a reaction, a global reaction now, and a global movement now that we're inviting everybody to join. To smile together, but smile working in order to make this change to happen, in order to react to the change and global challenges that are happening right now to the world. And that is our superpower.
That is fantastic. And I think everybody here is wearing capes today, because what we do have here is we actually have our superpower on the show, and you've all talked about it, but we're all in different parts of the world, and we're all connecting and collaborating is one of the powers that Agile brings to the table. Which sort of leads me to the next question, because a lot of people will be watching this going, well, you know, what does Agile have to do with this, right? You know, what does agility even have to do with the worldly problems? You know, how will we use it to do that? It's just the software, isn't it? But I think that's something that we need to address, team, and give them some different thought about that. Laurie, what do you think about that?
Well, yes, I think that first it's related to dealing with complexity and uncertainty. And I think that we as Agilists, we have been like dealing with complexity and uncertainty since a long time. So I think that like nowadays, it's not only about software development where we find like the complexity, but it's like everywhere. And I think that after the pandemic, this accelerates a lot. It happens like before, but I think that after the pandemic, it was like more tangible. And so I think that we as Agilists, we have a lot of experience and knowledge also to share. And this comes to the second point that to me, it's also like Agilists are good in connecting with people. You know, we love to build communities. We love, as Rocío said, like to focus on individuals and like interactions which are like others. So I think that this is also how I relate, you know, like planetary challenges or the challenges that we are dealing right now in our planet with Agilists, because I think that through we can be, and we are like already like connectors. We are connectors. We are, as you said, Tony, in different parts of the globe, and this happened with all of us, like working, you know, in different companies, and we are interconnected. We need to take advantage of that, and I think these are some of the things why, you know, Agilists are like motivating and co-creating this social movement here.
Yeah, Andrew, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think the concept of agile or agility has evolved to be a huge family or a huge body of knowledge. And I think the thing that's probably most relevant to this is really the kind of understanding of complexity that has emerged in the community. I think that a lot of responses to problems are designed around the idea that you need to do things in a big way. So the only way to affect change is to do something big that has a big price tag attached to it, and you've got a politician who can cut a ribbon at the end of it. Whereas what I think we've learned from complexity, and if anyone's interested, there's a really good little publication from the Cynefin company called the Field Guide to Managing Complexity in Times of Chaos that I'd recommend you read. I suppose what we've learned from complexity science is that the right way out of chaos is lots of parallel probes. So lots of different things that are happening. And when you get success with some of those things, you amplify them and make them bigger. And when you inevitably fail with a lot of them, you take the learnings and wrap those into what you're doing. So I think that, I suppose that sort of message is something that's really valuable for people who are making policy decisions and trying to navigate out of mess. It tends to, with these sort of chaos, these sort of events, they're little things and then arguments and then signs, and then all of a sudden you're tipped into a problem that is much bigger than any individual can handle. So it's nice to know that there are ways, theoretically at least, out of those problems.
Joanne, I can see you nodding and I can see you itching to say something. So yeah, I know you well enough.
I am like, you can see me like, yeah, I've been processing this for a bit of time, like why agile. The thing is, I'd also like to say there's a lot of different how would you call it, methodologies or there's different groups that are doing similar things that we're doing. So I don't want to sit there and say we're all unique and it's just agilists that can do. But what I like to sit there and my first thing is, because I love teams. I think for me it's the diversification of teams and being able to kind of work with the power of teams, because we know that any of these wicked problems or these planetary challenges that are out there requires the power of teams. And so we are really great at harnessing that kind of power, right? And so I think that we have a lot of the tools and toolkits to kind of do that. But the thing that I think is what we really have is this aspect of being and doing. So, we're touching on it, like we have all these practices that, like Andrew's just talking about, the system, like the frameworks from Cynefin, and there's a lot of a doing aspect of the things that we have, but there's a lot of being aspects that we know we need to be like to be able to do that. And I think that this is fundamentally a different thing than most of the industry has, is that we have both of these sides, right? Not just a checklist, right? Because most people want just a checklist of how to do it, but we have this whole mindset to go along with these particular practices. So I think that for me is why Agile is so great, along with what was said as well. So it's just to add and build upon what's said so far.
Yeah, it's a good point. And I'm going to do a little shout out to one of our friends who couldn't be here, unfortunately, with the magic spicy cough, as they call it these days, which is Lisa Atkins. And I think, I had her on the cast previously talking about this as well. And one of the things that she was harking to is the diversity of our community enables us and it empowers us to be able to make some change that a lot of other communities may not have. Rocío, what's your thoughts on this?
Well, I am thinking about the people that is listening to us, that they are like, we don't know from where, or if they have ever heard about the word agile before, and maybe they think that we are in the Olympics or something like that. So, I mean, like, when for that people, I mean, like, and for everybody, of course, it's just a reminder that what we do with agile is uncovering better ways to bring results by doing and helping others. That is what we do. Some people call that magic, but we call that agile. Yeah.
I like that.
and when you make the question and you said agile is not for software, I mean, like, and what that has to be with the challenging and global problems of the humanity, I said that you are totally right. The manifesto for agile was written for software development, and it's for software because it's the manifesto for agility for software development. That is why people like us, we started several other movements in order to bring this value-driven way to bring better results in other areas. Myself, I was like questioning that to Alistair Coburn, that is one of the writers of the original manifesto. And we ended up having a group and creating something called Social Impact Agile that drives me at the end to be vice president candidate of my country in the last elections. And during that journey, in one of the several movements and conferences and stuff, because of the global community, I have the blessing to meet Joanne. And Joanne told me, well, I have the wicked problem-solving group and community and movement and everything. And I ended up like meeting a lot of other people from everywhere in the world that I wish I could hug like everybody that is right now and could like bring a brief introduction of what Kubair, of what Laurie, Pia, or Andrew, they are doing. But the real thing is that each one of us, we are trying to use the agile way. It could be called method, domain, toolkit, focus, approach, I mean, whatever word you want to use. But the agile way to bring results in order to solve something, and what have us together is that we want to solve the impact, the major problems that are impacted right now our world, our humanity, our weather, our global challenges, and that is why this matters.
Great. Kubair, I could see it's interesting when you're the person who's throwing the question because I could see Tom go, oh, I want to comment on that. Kubair, I could see that you were itching to say something.
I absolutely love everything that my colleagues and my peers have said. But I'm going to go out and say Agile's got nothing to do with it. Agile isn't the reason why we are in the state we are as a people, be it socioeconomically, be it environmentally. So Agile's actually got nothing to do with it. So Agile is innocent of the state of the planet and its people that we find ourselves in. Now, all the things that we've tried and those before us have tried, they're not working, right? So it requires us to radically repurpose stuff, right? Which kind of brings me to Cynefin. Right? So when we find ourselves in that chaotic space, we start radically repurposing things. And Agile is one of those things that we are repurposing because it is a means to move towards an outcome. It is not a method or a means to get to the outcome. We don't know. The best we can do is experiment. And it's the most natural way to experiment because look, Agile is not new. Agile is in our DNA, right? Agile is in nature and we are agile creatures. What the movement allows us to do is to formulate a loose framework, dare I say framework, right? A loose framework to structure our journey towards the desired destination, because where we're standing right now is not very good, right? And that's where Agile comes in. It gives us that discipline, it gives us those practices, it gives us those ideas, that creativity to start experimenting and saying, hey, what's the next step I could take in that direction? And then after taking the step, having a think about, was that the right step? Am I heading in the right direction? Or do I need to course correct? And that's what Agile brings brings to our toolkit as human beings to try and address the problems that we find ourselves in. And as you said, Tony, and to ensure that our children don't inherit it. Because, more and more, the more and more I see, it's very likely, I hope not, that our kids are going to inherit it. Or what they inherit, we put a big dent into it.
Yeah.
Right. So for me, the toolbox that I can reach to and I'm comfortable with happens to be Agile.
Pia, I can see that you've been waiting to say something. You know, somebody's always got to be last. And just in case you know, I'm playing tic-tac-toe on the board, so it's quite good fun for me as a facilitator. But Pia, what's your thoughts?
Right. Yeah. Well, first of all, I've heard so many great things from all the other participants, and I couldn't agree more with, well, all of it. I want to touch on something or build on something that Joanne said about teamwork, because, well, on top of everything else, I think that's so important. You know, when trying to solve, well, the world's problems, we often hear about new technology or new innovations that are, well, announced to be solving the world's problems in maybe 15 years or 20 years when they're actually ready for production. But the truth is that we already have all the innovation and technology that we need to solve our challenges. I mean, they could be useful, but they aren't necessary. What we need is collaboration. And that's the kind of teamwork. And collaboration is a core skill in the agile, well, community. It's core to us. So that's a skill that we could bring to more areas, because that's what the world needs, not more technology.
It's a great point. It's a great point. Look, I was going to ask, about, I'll just pick up on what Kubair said, because he really, what he was really saying there is Agile's not the silver bullet, and Agile's innocent. I like that, innocent. It didn't create it's a way to do it. And one of the strong things that's come through here is community. And I was going to ask about community, but you've all talked about community so strongly that for me that thread runs through. What I'm more interested in asking you about is, where do we disrupt this change next? If we're going to do this, we're the agile leaders, right? And we love to disrupt and challenge status. That's what we do. What would you like to disrupt or change or challenge? So, and I'll start with Rocío, because I can see she's jumping in.
I was going to say start with Kubair, because I know he's ready to go. Not to put you on the spot, but I know there's that energy.
Oh my God, this is so fun. It's okay. I mean, so you are telling us that we look like disruptive people?
Maybe a little.
Kind of. Well, to disrupt something, you must have something that is already a status quo. And I think our status quo has already been disrupted totally. I mean, I don't have to mention that we have a war right now happening, and we just still in the pandemic, and we're recovering about like a global crash that changed and disrupt everything that has been happening by decades. For the first time in the history, we have the adults that are asking to the kids how the world is working. Technology has changed pretty much everything, and right now artificial intelligence can pass the medical and the lawyer's exam, most of exams for the most of careers in the world. I mean, the disruption is already here. And we work with that because by years and by experience and by the way that we do the things, we feel comfortable disrupting the things. We feel comfortable with change, and we embrace the change, and we lead others to surpass that change. And we, as a leader, we want more leaders to help us to do that. And this is the point where we have to take the leadership of every of our communities, or every of our countries, or every square meter or square feet that you are in your local space. Because as my friend Joanne says, when we create impact locally, we create hope globally. And that is what we do.
Peter, your thoughts? Pia?
Sorry. Yeah. My
My
thoughts. Yeah.
You were lost in your thoughts.
No, I just didn't catch my name. Sorry. Anyway, yeah, I think that there is a status quo. There is a status quo in people's heads still. I think a lot of people around the world are trying to, even though despite all the changes that Rocío was just mentioning, despite the evidence that things are happening, well, to our weather, to with wars, economic crashes, etc., people are still clinging to the thought that we can keep this status quo that we've been living for like since the 50s or something. And I think that's the thing I want to disrupt, the idea of continuing in the status quo that we're imagining will exist, because it won't. So the thing I'd like to replace is the thing we measure. You know, what you measure, you get. And what we're measuring globally right now is mostly material growth. And the truth is that material growth cannot go on forever, because we'll live on a limited earth. So, and also there are so many other things that are connected to human welfare. I mean, some decent level of material welfare is needed for everybody, but there's a limit to where that actually adds value. So measuring like we do now, what's it called? GDP in English, sorry. It's not enough. It's like measuring story points, which I know a lot of people do, but the story point measures some kind of output. It does not measure value, and it's the same kind of thing. So that's the thing I hope will be disrupted globally, how we think about, well, welfare, progress, what we measure.
I saw a little comment in there that was agreeing with you. It was a delusion of status quo from Rocío, and I think that's a fantastic point to pick up on, because there is no status quo in this world at the moment. We're in such a flux. Andrea, your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I'm starting to wake up, so I hope I'm going to start making a little bit more sense soon. I just wanted to talk about two statements that have come out that I think are in conflict with each other. So the first one is we're talking about disrupting the status quo and the need to do that. Then I go back to what Kubair said about us being agile creatures by nature. I don't think we're agile creatures by nature in general. I think that the way that the brain works means that we kind of create patterns of behavior, and we can become quite entrenched if we stay in the same state for a while. It's in novelty where we're agile in nature. And so I think that's the reason why people say it's easy to change people in a crisis. So never waste a crisis, for instance, is the management thing, because in that moment, you can impact a whole lot of change that you wouldn't be able to do otherwise, because people are compelled to create new brain patterns when they're in that novel situation. So I suppose my question is, if we want to disrupt the status quo on these planetary challenges, and obviously climate change is one of them at the moment, I think the plastics in the ocean is another one that's going to become something that's just kind of beyond control pretty soon. How do we bring forward that moment where people feel they need to change, or the novelty, so that it's not kind of like, I think what compelled Australians to start thinking a little bit differently politically was the biggest bushfires in history, plus nearly the biggest floods in history in like 2 or 3 years. Those were events that we could see, and they impacted people directly. And that compelled Australians, I think, to shift politically on some key things that have been, for a country that has a lot of mining and energy revenue, they were real sticking points for us. Yeah, that's my question. How do we kind of bring the compulsion point forward for people? Because we know the problems are exponential in nature, and if you catch them too late, it's hard to fix them.
Joanne, your thoughts?
Oh, yeah, I was going, oh, did you see me with my hand or something? Like, where did you see it? Like, well, I mean, when you ask the question, Andrew, I'm like, oh my gosh, my mind goes into solution mode. Totally. You know what? I totally agree that there's a triggering, I don't want to say triggered because it's not triggering, it's a great word from a mental health perspective, but activation, right? Like we get activated when certain things are in front of us. We'll get activated to do that. And I think another way is having conversations, right? And I think the one thing that we're avoiding a lot right now is to have like the planetary challenge, like those kind of conversations, and really having like good, deep listening, heart to heart type of conversations about it. And I think that if we can start having those kind of conversations, more of this will start getting activated. But I think we're avoiding it because I think it's painful, right? And that's just normal human nature to kind of avoid those kind of painful type of discussions. And not for everybody, but some people love it. But for me, I think that might be a place where I would activate it if it's not in front of us, right, hitting us, like So, but I'm sure there's other ways of doing it as well. But that's what came up for me when you started to say that, Andrew. Yeah.
Kubair, right of reply, Kubair.
So I'm gonna build on something that Pia said, right? We're desensitized. We've been desensitized towards value. We don't value the planet, we don't value life, we don't value human rights. It depends on who the human is, which nationality they're from, what language they speak, whatever box we can put them in. So we've been desensitized as a community. And when I say community, I mean a community of 8 billion creatures, right? And I'm going to pick on what Joanne said. It's about activation. So true, agile is not a silver bullet, but it is a silver mirror, right? That we can hold up to ourselves and to others and get us to start tapping back into that empathy that, we occasionally feel for others when the media wants us to feel that. Sorry for attacking the media, but engineering consent is a big and real thing, right? So whenever need be, the media engineers our consent towards an issue. We've got to move away from that, where we activate that silver mirror to ourselves, looking onto ourselves as well as that for others. So it is not topical. Right? It is significant. It's constant. So we see the plastics in the ocean. They kind of make the news rounds every 3 to 4 months, right? So fracking has gone out of the media because now we need to kind of frack because of the energy crisis that we have, right? We play down things like oil exploration in Alaska. It was a big deal a few years ago when someone else wanted to do it, but since we've got an energy crisis, so let's talk this stuff down. Likewise, the refugee crisis, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you just need to look at the world and just go like, WTF? The people we put in place to provide good governance for our countries and collectively, hopefully the world, they're not providing good governance. We put them in office and they do the biddings of the industrial complex, be it pharma, be it, arms manufacturers, be it banks, be it whoever, whichever lobbyist. I was watching a program where this guy said there's something like 500 plus legislators on Capitol Hill, and there are 900 plus lobbyists who work there. So that's just an experiment. There's just a number from the States, right? Where you've got more people representing corporate lobbies than people representing the people. Does that make sense? It doesn't make sense, right? So that's part of what the activation is, right? So in England, we're seeing rampant corruption, as we are with a lot of countries in the world, with COVID contracts, right? And those people who are committing those acts, they're still in office, right? That's not acceptable. right? So we've become so desensitized where we're like, yeah, not my problem, right? No, it is my problem. It is your problem, and your problem. It is our problem, right? Now I sound like what I am, which is an activist, and that's what all of us are at heart, right? We're activists. That's why people hire our services to go and work with their people so that we can bring some change. Now, all we got to do is spread this innate activism that is in all of us, right? You might be able to silence 50,000 people who walk, against something, but you can't really silence 8 billion people when they rise up and say, like, you know what, enough is enough. So it's that whole 1% versus the 99% debate. And what we're trying to do is mobilize the 99% and say, hey, you know what, this is where the power rests.
I like that, and I concur. So, for my 2 cents worth of it, one of where we should be looking towards that is that we all have these connections, and many of us work with leaders. We're talking top tier leaders, we're talking CEOs, CIOs. We need to start influencing these board people and these CEOs and using those connections that we have. Laurie, what's your thoughts? Because you haven't had a chance to speak on this yet.
Yeah, thank you, Tony. So yes, I was thinking about this connection, and we are talking about like being disconnected with others. But I am also like reflecting on the idea that we are first disconnecting from ourselves. And so something that I would like to bring to the conversation is the importance to reconnect with our body. So because we are always like connecting with our mind, and our mind is brilliant, but we are human beings. And as human beings, we have a mind, we have also a body, which brings a lot of wisdom, to the topic that we are talking, and to the connection with others. We cannot like develop emotional intelligence without being connected like with our body. And this is really important for us in this moment to then like connect with other people. If we don't do that first for ourselves, if we don't like create awareness about what is happening to our body, what is like a feeling also when it is so important when connecting with communities or with some like activating something, it's like, okay, so how I'm feeling, what is in my body. I don't know, like at least for me, every time I take a decision, like I take the decision with my body first, or I listen to my body very carefully. Perhaps our mind is like, yeah, and my body is no, then it's no, So I think that this connection with others starts with ourselves, because I really believe that we need to first go into the inner development to then like go into the sphere of like relating with others. So we tend to go directly to the like doing, to the connecting, and we are like skipping the part of like the inner development. So my question is, from which source are we connecting with the other person? And this is something that we all need to reflect on. And if we will able to first go into this inner development, then the interconnections with others, the quality of these interconnections will change. And by doing that, by changing the quality of our interconnections, then what is going to emerge will be different. But first, we need to start with ourselves. Yes, that's some of my thoughts.
Thank you so much. Team, this has been a really good conversation. We are getting very close to the end. But I can't let you go. And might I say, for a facilitator facilitating the facilitators, this has been less disruptive than I thought it would be. So, but where do we start? How do we start? What would you recommend for someone to get started in this? Joanne?
I would start with your own. It's funny because I'm thinking of what you're saying, Anna, in terms of starting with yourself, is actually where I would start with. Like I think there's this aspect of really understanding and feeling out what the planetary challenges which are out there, and trying to figure out exactly which one of those is really compelling for you to start really activating and working on with and being with that, right? Because there's so many things that we could potentially do out there. And I would sit there and say that because we're empathetic creatures, I'm sure there's a lot of things that's there. But I would start with ourselves and figuring out what we can align to. Mine, of course, is with community and connection and people and that, like, and and the planet. And so, but there's, somebody could have something different, and then start to look close to you. Where can you connect with others close? And because I think through that connection with others, it starts to activate other things. And there's so many communities all over the world that are doing something. And I've talked to quite a few communities around, especially from the Agile perspective, where people in the community are actually doing things, right? And they need help and they need support, and we need to talk about this more. So I start with ourselves, then work with your community and with others, right? To activate it even more.
Brilliant. Kubair, your thoughts?
I'm just going to echo what Joanne said and just add that for me, people are the priority, because the reason our planet is in the state it is in is because of us, human beings. So for me, it's about prioritizing people in and around your community. That'd be the next or the possible smallest step to take. And just reflect on what their needs are. How might they feel marginalized? Where might we be able to have a conversation? And sometimes it's just about taking 5 minutes out to have a conversation and deep listening, right? And connecting with another human being. And that in itself, that very act in itself, can change their outlook, behavior, and worldview, right? And that's what we're trying to do, is change behaviors and worldview. So, yeah, thank you.
Laura?
Yes, so I agree with what Joanne and Kubair said. Also, like, I think that we need to sense what communities we really feel like, okay, so this really attract me and engage with this community. And I think that also something very practical to do is to assess your level of listening. So this is something very easy. We are all like working with conversations, and we can like very briefly in one paper here, like said, okay, so I am listening from my own thoughts. I am trying to reconfirm my like own ideas, or I am first like second level of listening. I am like perceiving that there is another person there with different thoughts, perhaps number 2, level 2, and number 3, perhaps like, okay, so I'm not only like seeing this other person, but also sensing this person is number 3. And we can go deeper if you want, but only with these 3 assessments like every day, then like you can perhaps change and perform a better, very important skill for everyone.
Pia, your thoughts?
Yeah, I'd like to echo first what Joanne said about starting with where you already are in your local, well, what resonates with you. We have so many challenges, and whatever resonates most with you, go for it. So that's the first thing. I mean, that's also the first principle Kanban. Start with what you do now. And that's where we got to start, because wherever would we otherwise start? And there are so many things you can do, and you could evaluate the most effective thing to do forever and ever and ever. So I'd also like to echo what Kubair said in the beginning of this cast, that, we have this framework in Agile, which is like, do something, then measure the effect of what you did, and then decide on the next thing, do more of the same or change course. But you got to start with doing something, because if you don't, then the chances are that you'll get stuck in analyzing the best option forever and ever.
Excellent. Rocío, yeah, I can see you're wanting to say.
Yeah, it's because Kubair activate or trigger something in me that just like shut my anger, because he mentioned that we don't have the right governments. We don't have the right people in the government leading us. And if we don't have the right people governing us, it's because we let them. It's because we are not there. Because there is no empty chair in the politics. There is no empty chair in the leadership. And you have to be the change that you want to see in the world. You have to be the change that you want to see in the local way. So where to start answering your question? We will have a Congress, April 21st and April 22nd. These people, all of us that we are here, plus others, we are gathering together to create a Congress on April 21st and April 22nd. And you will see more in the following days in social media. You can follow us in any of social media, starting from LinkedIn, because we are really active in LinkedIn, but also in TikTok, in Facebook, in Instagram, in Twitter. I mean, like we are a community, so we are everywhere. Personally, personally myself, you can just put my name, Rocío Agile, and will pop up. You put my name in Google and will pop up all my social media. Or you could write SI, Agile, like social impact Agile, and you will have all my contacts, and I will redirect you according to your intentions to the Agile Impact movement. That is the one that we are creating together. What else you can do? You can go to your local, in your country, communities. As my colleagues also said, Laurie and Pia, you can like join to our local communities. Agile is everywhere right now, and we are like local groups everywhere. So I trigger everybody that is listening to us to start now, to start today. I mean, if you can move face to face and go there, just go and gather in the communities, make some friends, and start doing projects that you can do to improve the world. If you don't want to move, if you want to be a couch potato and stay over there, just use your phone and enter to the Congress that we will have on April 21st, or contact us in the social media.
Brilliant.
Thank
Andrew.
you.
Rocío, we need to take our own chair where they give us none.
Yeah. You see what happens when you trigger me? You see?
Do what you've done. You disrupted
I
the-
love it. Thank you.
Andrew, you get lucky last comment.
Yeah, look, that's a big responsibility, Tony. Yeah, look, I think probably my last comment is I don't think things are necessarily all bad or all good. So I do think we're living at a pretty privileged time in human history, and it's the kind of things that we're talking about are problems of abundance rather than problems of the opposite nature, which I think is what humans throughout history have struggled with. So there's good in that. But there's also these things that are happening that are clearly becoming problems that are beyond the control of a single person or a single jurisdiction or a single country that we need to collaborate on. So then I'd come back to some of the key things that people have said throughout here. So I think Pia made a really good point. Are we measuring the things that bring us sustainable success, or are we measuring the things that give us a sugar hit? I think Joanne brought up the point, are we connecting the right people to solve problems, and are we connecting them in a way that they can be effective? I think Laurie really focused in on, are we actively listening to other opinions, or are we just cherry picking out the bits that we find interesting and important? Kubair, I really liked your point. Are we actually seeing the truth? So when we're measuring things, are we seeing the truth, or are we merely seeing what people want us to see? And Rocío, I think your key point that I'm really into is, are we focusing more on the individuals and the interactions, or are we just focusing on processes and things? So I think if you bring those 5 questions together, you'd start to form a pathway out. And the only thing I'd add to that is, one of the first things that I've always said to Agile teams is that you need to stop focusing on starting and start focusing on finishing. And I think finishing in this context means making sure that things that we build, regardless of what we're doing or where we are in society, are both valuable but also sustainable. So they're not introducing new mess for the future.
That's some fantastic points, Andrew. Thank you for summarising. So that was brilliant as well. And look, we're really at the end of our time. It's been fantastic to have you all on this cast. I would say if I was bringing this together, you know, the thing is, if you're watching this cast, do something. My call to action for you is, this is not just a crisis of our time. This is a crisis of your children's time and your children's children's time. So do something, reach out, start getting involved. You'll find everything you need in the show notes to touch base with any of these people. Obviously, you can touch base with the Impact Agility team as well. Please take note, do something. It's been fantastic to have everybody on all the remote things. Thank you again, team, for being here today.
Thank you very much for having us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Lovely to see you all.
Thank you.